The war lasted 3 more months. 3 months of blood and fire and endless death. The Velnorians had the numbers and the technology, but the humans had something else. They had the will to keep fighting no matter how bad things got. High Commander Varteth tried everything. He ordered massive bombardments from orbit, but the humans had hidden their important facilities underground. He sent wave after wave of troops into the mountains, but the soldiers who went in never came back out. He established fortified bases across the planet, but every base was attacked within days, sometimes within hours. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck without warning and vanished without a trace. They knew the land, knew the weather, knew every cave and valley and hidden path. The Velnorian soldiers, who had conquered 17 star systems, found themselves afraid to patrol at night, afraid to leave their bases, afraid of an enemy they could rarely even see. And in space, Admiral Palmer kept his fleet moving. He never let the Velnorians pin him down. He appeared, attacked, and disappeared before they could respond. His ships were faster, and his captains were smarter. Every time the Velnorians thought they had him trapped, he found a way to escape and strike again from an unexpected direction. By the end of the 3rd month, the Velnorian invasion force was broken. They had started with 300 warships and 100,000 soldiers. Now they had less than 100 ships and barely 30,000 troops, most of them hiding in their bases, waiting for an evacuation that many doubted would ever come. Varteth stood alone on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. His flagship had taken heavy damage in the last battle. Half his crew was dead. The ship limped through space, barely able to hold together. Kethel approached carefully. The tactical officer looked exhausted, his carapace dull and cracked from stress. "Aye, Commander," he said quietly. "We have received orders from the Empire. We are to withdraw immediately. The Senate has decided that Kepler 442b is not worth the cost." Varteth did not respond at first. He stared out at the stars, at the planet that had destroyed his career and shattered his belief in Velnorian superiority. How many ships can still make the journey home? He finally asked, 94, if we leave the most damaged ones behind. And the soldiers on the surface? Kethel hesitated. We can only evacuate about half of them. The rest will have to surrender to the humans. Varteth closed his eyes. Surrendering soldiers to an enemy was the greatest shame a commander could face. But what choice did he have? He had led his people into a trap, and now he had to save as many as he could. "Begin the evacuation," he ordered. "Get our people off that cursed planet. We are going home." The Velnorian fleet withdrew from Kepler 442b 3 days later. The humans watched them go, exhausted but victorious. When the last enemy ship jumped into hyperspace, a cheer went up across the planet. They had done it. They had won. General Morrison stood on the surface, looking up at the sky. The sun was rising, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. It was the most beautiful sunrise she had ever seen. Colonel Webb walked up beside her. He was thinner than he had been before the war, his face lined with new scars and old worries. But he was smiling. "We did it, General," he said. "We actually did it." Morrison nodded slowly. "We did, but it cost us. A lot of good people died for this victory. I know. But they died fighting for something that mattered. They died so that humanity could show the galaxy who we really are." Morrison thought about that for a moment. She thought about all the soldiers who had given their lives, all the pilots who had flown into impossible odds, all the ordinary people who had refused to surrender even when everything seemed hopeless. "What do you think the Velnorians learned from this?" Webb asked. "I think they learned that there are some species you do not want to fight. Some species that are more trouble than they are worth." Morrison looked at him. "I think they learned that humans are one of those species. Far away, across the vast darkness of space, High Commander Verteth arrived home to face the judgment of the Valnorian Senate. He stood before them in the great hall, his damaged armor still showing the scars of battle, and told them what had happened. "We studied their ships," he said. "We studied their weapons. We studied their numbers. And we concluded that they were weak, primitive, easy to conquer. We were wrong." The senators listened in silence. Many of them had never seen Verteth look so defeated. "The humans do not fight the way civilized species fight," Verteth continued. "They do not follow rules. They do not seek honor in battle. They fight to survive, and they will do anything to win. Anything at all." He pulled up images from the war. Burning ships, destroyed convoys, Valnorian soldiers lying dead in places where no enemy was visible. They turned space into a minefield. They turned their planet into a trap. They attacked us every moment of every day, from directions we never expected, using tactics we had never seen. And when we had them outnumbered and outgunned, they still found ways to beat us. The High Chancellor leaned forward. "What do you suggest we do now, Commander? Should we send a larger fleet? Should we return with overwhelming force?" Verteth shook his head. "No, we should do what wise hunters do when they encounter something more dangerous than themselves. We should leave humanity alone. We should find easier prey. And we should pray to our gods that they never decide to expand in our direction." The Senate chamber was silent for a long moment. "You are saying," the Chancellor said slowly, "that we should fear these creatures? These soft, short-lived beings with no claws and no armor?" "Yes," Verteth replied simply. "I am saying exactly that. I have fought many species across many worlds. I have never faced anything like the humans. They are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest or the most advanced. But they are the most stubborn. And that stubbornness makes them more dangerous than any enemy we have ever faced." The Senate agreed to leave humanity alone. The Valnorian Empire, which had never lost a war, officially declared the campaign against Kepler 442b to be strategically unnecessary and moved on to easier targets. But the news of what had happened spread across the galaxy. Other species heard about the humans who had laughed at an empire's war cry. They heard about the impossible victory, the tactics that seemed like madness, the sheer refusal to surrender. And for the first time, the galaxy began to understand that there was something different about these strange creatures from the small, blue planet called Earth. Back on Kepler 442b, life slowly returned to normal. The cities were rebuilt. The farms were replanted. The soldiers came home to their families, carrying memories they would never forget. General Morrison retired a year later. On her last day in uniform, she visited the memorial that had been built for the soldiers who had died in the war. Thousands of names were carved into black stone, each one representing someone who had given everything to protect their home. She stood there for a long time, reading the names, remembering the faces. "Thank you," she whispered to the dead. "You showed the galaxy who we are. You showed them that humanity does not bow to anyone. And because of you, they will think twice before threatening us again." The wind blew across the memorial, carrying the scent of flowers that grew around its base. Katie Morrison smiled, turned, and walked away into a future that her fallen soldiers had died to protect. The war was over. The humans had won. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, the Valnorian Empire was very, very quiet. It would be a long time before anyone tried to conquer humanity again. The year was 2347. Humanity had finally reached the stars. After 200 years of space travel, Earth received a message that changed everything. The Galactic Council, a group of 17 alien species who ruled the galaxy, invited humans to come and speak with them. Commander Daniel Price, was chosen to lead this important mission. He was a calm man of 52 years who had spent his whole life preparing for moments like this. He stood on his ship, the horizon's dawn, and watched the strange colors of space pass by the windows. His team was small but skilled. Lieutenant Commander Amy Novak handled all communications. Dr. Kevin Walsh studied alien life. Maria Santos understood alien cultures. Together, they would represent all of humanity. "We are close to Covenant Station," Amy said, looking at her screen. "They gave us permission to land in the outer ring." Daniel frowned. The outer ring was far from the center of power. It was where they put visitors they did not respect. "They are not giving us a warm welcome." Kevin pushed his glasses up his nose. "Can you blame them? We are the youngest species to reach the stars in 3,000 years. To them, we are just children." Maria stepped forward and looked at the massive ring station growing larger in the window. "Children or not, we are here to show them that humanity deserves respect." The ship landed without problems. Daniel led his team through long, clean hallways. Strange aliens walked past them and stared. There were tall insect creatures called vricks, who made clicking sounds with their mouths. There were floating creatures like jellyfish called Moravians. And there were reptile beings called Kareth, who watched them with cold, unblinking eyes. A Kareth named Overseer Thelvox met them at the end of the hallway. His scales changed colors as he spoke, and a small machine turned his hissing voice into flat English words. "Commander Price, the Council will see you tomorrow. You will stay in your rooms until we call you." "Thank you for having us," Daniel said carefully. "We brought gifts from Earth, art, science, and ideas for working together." Thelvox blinked his inner eyelids. "The Council will decide what they want. Rest now." That night, the team sat in their small rooms and talked about what they knew. The Kareth controlled the military. The Moravians controlled the money. The Vricks controlled trade. Together, these three species made most of the decisions for the whole galaxy. "They are scared of us," Maria said quietly. She showed them numbers on her screen. "Look at how fast we grow. How quickly we learn. We did in 200 years what took them 1,000. Amy nodded slowly. "I listened to their messages. They call us the plague species. They think we will spread and take over everything." Daniel lay in his bed that night and thought about these words. He had always believed that talking could solve any problem. But how do you talk to people who already hate you? The next morning, guards brought them to the council chamber. It was a huge room shaped like a bowl. Representatives from all 17 species sat in rows, looking down at a small platform in the center. Daniel walked to that platform alone. His team watched from far away. Thelvox spoke from his high seat. "Humanity wants to join the Galactic Council. Commander Price, tell us why we should let you." Daniel talked for almost an hour. He spoke about humanity's journey to the stars. He talked about peace and friendship. He offered to share technology and knowledge. He promised that humans would follow all the rules and be good members of the galactic community. When he finished, the room was silent. Then the questions started. But they were not the questions Daniel expected. No one asked about trade or science or culture. Instead, they asked about weapons. How many warships did humanity have? How powerful were human guns? How many soldiers could Earth send to war? They asked about human history. They talked about the wars humans had fought against each other. They called humans violent and dangerous. They said humans could not be trusted. With each question, Daniel felt his hope getting smaller. This was not a friendly conversation. This was an attack. Finally, Thelvox raised his clawed hand. "Enough. We will think about this and give our answer." 3 days passed. Daniel and his team waited in their rooms with no news. When they were finally called back to the chamber, Daniel could tell from Thelvox's body language that the answer would be bad. "The Council has decided," Thelvox announced. "Humanity cannot join us. Also, humanity must stay where they are now. You cannot take any more planets. You cannot enter Council space. If you break these rules, we will see it as an attack. This decision cannot be changed." Daniel stood frozen. This was worse than rejection. They were building a prison around humanity. "Overseer," he said, keeping his voice steady, "this is not fair. We have done nothing wrong. We came here offering peace." "The decision cannot be changed," Thelvox repeated. "Go home and tell your leaders. Humanity will obey, or humanity will suffer." Something cold grew in Daniel's chest. He had believed his whole life that talking could fix anything. But looking up at those 17 species, seeing the fear and hate in their alien eyes, he understood something terrible. They had never planned to give humanity a chance. This meeting was just for show. They had already decided to cage humanity like dangerous animals. "I will take your message home," Daniel said quietly. "But I want the Council to understand something. Humanity came here with open hands and honest hearts. We wanted peace. We wanted friendship. Whatever happens after this, remember that we tried. We really tried." He turned and walked out. His team followed him in silence. In the hallway, Amy grabbed his arm. "What did you mean by whatever happens next?" Daniel kept walking, his face hard as stone. "I meant what I said. They made their choice. Now humanity will have to make ours." The Horizon's Dawn left Covenant Station and began the long journey home. Daniel stood at the window and watched the stars pass by. He thought about his mission. He thought about all his hopes for peace. And he thought about what humanity might have to do now that peace was no longer possible. The Council believed they had solved the human problem. They believed that they had put the young species in its place. They believed their power would keep humanity quiet and small forever. They were very, very wrong. 6 months passed after the Council's decision. On Earth, leaders argued about what to do. Some wanted to ignore the rules and expand anyway. Others said humanity should wait and keep trying to talk. In the end, they chose to try one more time. Daniel Price volunteered to go back. Many people thought he was crazy. The Council had treated him badly and rejected everything he believed in. But Daniel still had hope. He still believed that somewhere in the Council, there were reasonable people who might listen. This time, he brought only one person with him. Lieutenant Commander Amy Novak came as his communications officer. They traveled in a small ship with no weapons, following every rule perfectly. They sent messages on every channel saying they came in peace. The Council agreed to meet them, but not in the big chamber. Instead, Daniel would talk to a small group who would then tell the full Council what they thought. "It is something," Daniel told Amy as their ship landed. "It is a chance." The small group had 5 members. 2 Karath, 1 Moravian, 1 Vrix, and a small furry creature from a species called the Talani. They met in a plain room with no windows, far from the grand halls of power. Daniel made his argument again. He talked about fairness. He said humanity was being punished for things they had not done. He said the rules were based on fear, not facts. The Council members listened without speaking. When Daniel finished, the senior Kareth, a female named Valkyra, spoke. "Commander Price, you talk about fairness. But fairness must serve the whole galaxy, not just one species. Your history shows what humans can do. You fought wars against your own kind. You destroyed your own planet's nature. Why should we believe you have changed?" "Because we have changed," Daniel said. "The same people who once made war have now united under one government. We work together. We protect our world. We can do the same for the galaxy. Can you?" Valkyra's eyes narrowed. Or have you simply run out of enemies at home and now want to find new ones among the stars? The argument went on for hours. Nothing Daniel said seemed to matter. The council members had already made up their minds. But Daniel kept trying, because giving up meant accepting that humanity would be prisoners forever. Then the Talani representative, a soft-spoken male named Keth, raised his small hand. Maybe we can find a middle way. What if humanity accepted watchers? Council observers in your space who can see that you are not building weapons or planning attacks. If you have nothing to hide, this should be acceptable. Daniel paused. He knew Earth would not like having aliens watching everything they did. But maybe this was the only door that would open. I would need to ask my government, he said carefully. But I am willing to bring this idea to them. Valkyra made an angry sound. There will be no discussion. The Council does not negotiate with lower species. Then why are we here? Daniel asked, his patience finally breaking. Why have this meeting if you never plan to listen? The room went quiet. Valkyra stood slowly from her seat. Her scales changed to colors that Daniel's translator could not explain. You are here because the Council wanted to test you, to see if humanity could accept its place in the natural order. You have shown that you cannot. She waved her hand at the guards standing by the door. They were Kara soldiers in heavy armor. What is happening? Amy demanded, moving closer to Daniel. Commander Price, Valkyra continued, you are charged with trying to start a rebellion against the Galactic Council. The punishment is death. This is madness. Daniel shouted. I came here with diplomatic protection. I have done nothing but speak for my people. Your people are a disease, Valkyra spat. And you are a symptom. The Council will show the galaxy what happens to species that do not know their place. The guards moved forward. Daniel saw Amy reaching for the small weapon at her side, but he grabbed her arm. Do not fight them. Get back to the ship. Get back to Earth. I will not leave you. That is an order. He looked into her eyes, willing her to understand. Someone has to tell them what happened here. Someone has to warn them. The guards grabbed Daniel. He did not fight. He watched as two soldiers pushed Amy toward the hallway. Her screams echoed off the walls as they dragged her away. The last thing Daniel saw before they took him was Keth. The Talani, looking down at his hands with what might have been shame. They did not give Daniel a trial. They did not let him speak in the main plaza of Covenant Station. In front of representatives from all 17 species, Commander Daniel Price was killed by Kara soldiers. His body was left in the plaza for 6 hours before they burned it. The message was clear. Humanity had no rights. Humanity had no protection. The Council could do whatever it wanted, and there was nothing Earth could do about it. At least. That is what the Council believed. Lieutenant Commander Amy Novak escaped Covenant Station in their small ship. She flew without stopping for 3 days, pushing the engines past their limits. She sent coded messages ahead to warn Earth what was coming. When she finally landed in Geneva, she could barely stand. She had not slept or eaten properly since leaving the station, but she delivered her message. She told them everything. The fake hearing, the false charges, the murder of an innocent man who had only wanted peace. President Laura Bishop received the news in a dark room surrounded by her advisors. She listened to Amy's report without any expression on her face. When Amy finished, the president spoke one word. Protocol? General Marcus Cole, the highest military officer on Earth, stepped forward. His voice was heavy with the weight of what he was about to say. Annihilation protocol was made for exactly this situation, Madam President. A complete, overwhelming response to a threat against our survival. We have planned it for decades, but we never thought we would actually need it. They murdered our envoy, the president said quietly. A man who went to them with nothing but hope and good intentions. They murdered him to send us a message. She looked up, and her eyes were cold as ice. Now we send ours. She stood up and straightened her jacket. Start Annihilation protocol. Right now. The order went out across Earth, to every military base, every hidden facility, every secret project that the public had never known about. Ships that had been sleeping in darkness began to wake up. Weapons that had been kept secret for generations were brought into the light. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They had thought humanity was weak. They had thought humans would accept their cage quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 5 years after the destruction of Covenant Station, representatives from 32 species gathered on a new station in neutral space. It was called Harmony Station. The name was perhaps too hopeful, given the complicated history that had brought them all there. Captain Amy Novak, now humanity's senior diplomat, stood at the main window and watched shuttles arrive from dozens of different worlds. She thought about Daniel Price and how proud he would have been to see this moment. "Quite a crowd," said a familiar voice behind her. She turned to find Admiral Hayes approaching. The Admiral had retired from active service, but still carried herself like a soldier. She had spent the past year helping to train the new Interstellar Peacekeeping Force, a joint military group that answered to no single species. "Bigger than I expected," Amy admitted. "We have representatives from every former Council species, except the Karath extremists. And them? Still hiding in their home system. Still refusing to accept what has happened," Amy sighed. "Some people cannot let go of the past." Hayes nodded slowly. "Give them time. Another generation, maybe two. The anger will fade." The two women walked together toward the main assembly hall. Along the way, they passed beings of every shape and kind. The insect-like Vrix, now humanity's closest trading partners. The Talani, who had become enthusiastic supporters of the new order. The Moravians, still complaining about lost profits, but taking part anyway. They even passed a few Karath. These were moderates who had broken with their government's extreme position and joined the growing group of cooperating species. The assembly hall was huge, built to hold beings of all sizes and needs. At its center was a round table where representatives would sit as equals. No raised seats, no positions of power. President Bishop had demanded that detail. "No one sits above anyone else," she had said. "That is the whole point." The president herself was there now, moving through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting representatives and solving last-minute problems. She caught Amy's eye and called her over. "How does it look?" Bishop asked. "As good as we could hope, Madam President. There is still some tension between the Vrix and the Moravians over trade rules. The Karath moderates are nervous about being seen as traitors by their homeworld. But overall, I think we are ready." Bishop nodded, her expression thoughtful. 5 years ago, I gave the order to destroy the old Galactic Order. I have questioned that decision every day since. No one else could have made it. That does not mean it was right." The president looked out at the gathered representatives. "But maybe this is our chance to prove it was. To show that something better can be built from the wreckage." The assembly was called to order. Representatives took their seats at the round table, and President Bishop rose to speak. "Friends," she began, using that word on purpose to show the relationship she hoped to build. "We are here because the old way of doing things failed. The council was started with good intentions, but it became something else. It became a tool of fear and control that stopped entire species from growing." She paused to let her words settle. "Humanity broke that system, and I will not pretend we did not cause great suffering in doing so. Ships were destroyed. Lives were lost. Civilizations were shaken to their foundations. We did what we believed we had to do, but that does not mean we are proud of all of it. What we are proud of is what we have built since. Not conquered, built. Together, with partners who chose to join us, we have created something the galaxy has never seen. A true community of equals." She gestured at the assembled representatives. "Every species at this table has the same voice, the same vote, the same rights. No one can be punished without fair process. No one can be stopped from growing and expanding peacefully. These are not human principles. They are universal principles that belong to everyone. Today, we make this community official as the Interstellar Congress, not a government that rules over its members, but a place where problems can be solved, cooperation can be organized, and shared challenges can be faced together." She raised her hand, and around the table, representatives of 32 species did the same. This gesture had been chosen because it existed in some form in almost every culture. "We promise ourselves to peace," Bishop said, "to equality, to the idea that every thinking being in this galaxy has value and deserves the chance to reach their full potential. This is the future we choose." The vote was unanimous. Afterward, there was celebration. Beings from different worlds mixed and talked and found things they had in common. Amy found herself talking with Keth, the Talani who had become one of humanity's closest friends. "You humans have a saying," Keth observed, his translator carrying a hint of amusement. "Be careful what you wish for. I wonder if you understand yet what you have done." Amy smiled. "What do you mean?" "You set out to prove that humanity deserved a seat at the table. Instead, you built a new table." Keth's ears twitched. "And now every species in the galaxy looks to you for guidance, for leadership. Whether you wanted that responsibility or not, you have it now." Amy thought about this. "I suppose we do. But we do not have to carry it alone. That is the whole point. Sharing the weight, working together." "Very human of you," Keth said. "Always so eager to share." He made a sound that his translator called a chuckle. "It is strange, you know. When the Council decided to cage humanity, they did so because they feared what you might become. They saw your ability to destroy and assumed you would turn it against them. And they were right to see the ability, but they were wrong about what you would do with it." Keth looked down at the celebrating crowd. "You could have crushed us all, become the new masters of the galaxy. Instead, you chose this." Amy followed his gaze. Across the hall, she saw humans laughing with Rix traders, discussing ideas with Moravian money experts, sharing drinks with Kareth moderates who had taken a big risk by coming here. "Maybe that is the real lesson," she said quietly. "It is not about what you can do. It is about what you choose to do with that power." Keth made that chuckling sound again. Very human indeed. The celebration went on late into the station's artificial night. But Amy slipped away eventually, finding her way back to the main window. She stood there alone, looking out at the stars. The same stars that Daniel Price had looked at with such hope so many years ago. "We did it, Daniel," she whispered. "Not the way you would have wanted, but we did it. We found our place among the stars." The universe did not answer. It never did. But somewhere out there on hundreds of worlds, beings of every kind were looking up at those same stars with something they had never felt before. Hope. Hope that the future might be better than the past. Hope that working together could beat fighting. Hope that the galaxy's darkest days were finally over. It was not the ending anyone had expected, but it was, perhaps, the ending the galaxy had always needed. And for humanity, the young species that had been told to know their place, it was just the beginning. The galaxy had made a mistake about humanity. The Council looked at the numbers and felt safe. Humanity had been traveling through space for only 200 years. The youngest Council species had been doing it for 3,000 years. How could these newcomers be a threat? They were about to find out. Annihilation Protocol was not one weapon or one plan. It was everything. Every secret project, every hidden technology, every backup plan that humanity had made since first meeting alien life. It was what happened when a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars against itself decided to prepare for the worst thought within one day of Daniel's murder. The human military began to move. But this was not the military that the Council had seen and laughed at. That had been a show, a trick to make humanity look weak and harmless. The real human navy came out of hidden places. Ships rose from secret bases on moons and asteroids. They emerged from stations that looked like civilian buildings. The Council had never seen these ships, built with technologies that were not supposed to exist. Admiral Christina Hayes stood on the bridge of her ship, the Reckoning. She was 61 years old and had served in the Navy for 40 years. She had never fired a weapon at a real enemy. None of them had. Humanity's growth into space had been peaceful. That time was over now. "All ships report ready," said her second-in-command, Commander Sam Griffin. 1,500 warships. 2 million crew members. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. She opened the channel to speak to every ship in the fleet at once. "This is Admiral Hayes. You know what happened at Covenant Station. Commander Daniel Price was murdered in cold blood. The Council killed him because they see us as animals to be controlled and killed whenever they want." She paused to let the words sink in. "For 200 years, we reached out to the stars with open hands. We offered friendship and peace. That offer was rejected. The Council has made their position clear. Humanity will never be accepted, never be respected, never be safe as long as they have power over us." Her voice grew harder. "So we will take that power away. Annihilation Protocol is not about revenge or conquest. It is about survival. We will destroy the Council's ability to threaten us, and we will do it so completely that no one will ever think about attacking humanity again." She straightened in her chair. "Some of us will not come home, but those who fall will die knowing they protected everyone they left behind. That is what we do. That is who we are. We are human, and we do not go quietly." She gave a sharp nod. "All ships, prepare to jump. First target is Covenant Station. Let us show them what they woke up." The fleet jumped. Covenant Station had defenses. It was the center of galactic government, protected by the combined forces of 17 species. Over 200 warships flew around it. Weapon platforms floated in orbit. Defense systems covered the surface. Against a normal enemy, these defenses would have been more than enough. The human fleet appeared from hyperspace in perfect formation. Immediately, they released electronic weapons that the Council had never seen before. Karath targeting systems went crazy, seeing enemies that were not there while missing the real ones. Moravian shields flickered and died as human computer viruses attacked their networks. Rick's communication channels filled with noise as human jammers blocked their signals. In the first 30 seconds, before anyone fired a single shot, the Council's defenses fell apart. Then the real fighting began. Human weapons were far more powerful than anyone had expected. The Council thought humanity was still using primitive technology. They were wrong. The Reckoning fired its main guns. Metal rods flew at incredible speeds, tearing through 3 Karath destroyers before they could even try to move away. Admiral Hayes watched the battle on her screens, giving orders with calm precision. Second group, launch fighters, attack their weapon platforms. Third group, engaged the heavy ships on the left. The Council forces fought back desperately, but they were beaten in every way. Human ships were faster. Human weapons were stronger. Human crews were better trained. The defensive fleet was destroyed in less than an hour. The survivors ran for the edges of the system. "Enemy fleet is running away," Commander Griffin reported. "The station soldiers are trying to escape." "Let them go," Hayes ordered. "We are not here to kill soldiers who are just following orders. Our target is the station itself." The Reckoning moved into position, its weapons pointing at the massive ring that had been the seat of galactic power for thousands of years. Open a channel to the station, Admiral Hayes ordered. Her face appeared on every screen on the station. This is Admiral Christina Hayes of the United Terran Navy. You have 15 minutes to get everyone off the station. Anyone who wants to leave can go without being harmed. After 15 minutes, we will fire. There will be no second warning. She ended the transmission. The next 15 minutes were chaos. Shuttles and escape pods launched from every part of the station. Diplomats, workers, and civilians fled the destruction they knew was coming. Human ships held their fire and let the evacuation happen. When the time was up, Admiral Hayes gave the order. The destruction of Covenant Station was complete and thorough. The Reckoning and its sister ships reduced the ancient station to pieces, erasing the symbol of Council authority from existence. But this was only the beginning. Over the next 6 weeks, the human Navy carried out the rest of Annihilation Protocol. They did not invade planets or occupy enemy territory. Instead, they struck at things the Council needed to fight. Shipyards where new warships were built. Fuel stations where ships refilled. Communication networks that let the Council coordinate. Military bases scattered across the galaxy. Each strike was careful and precise. Destroy the military targets. Leave the civilians alone. The Karath homeworld watched helplessly as their orbital defenses were destroyed. The Moravian banking networks went dark as human hackers took them over. Vrick's trade routes became impossible to travel as human forces destroyed the beacons that ships needed for navigation. Species that had never lost a war found themselves facing an enemy they could not beat. The Council had more ships than humanity, but numbers meant nothing when you could not communicate, could not coordinate, could not even find your enemy. And humanity was not just fighting with ships and weapons. Information specialists flooded alien networks with messages about the Council's crimes against humanity. Intelligence officers contacted rebel groups on Council worlds. Species that had been conquered or pushed aside by the Council were encouraged to remember their anger. The Council had united 17 species through diplomacy and force. Humanity began to pull those bonds apart. 3 months after Covenant Station's destruction, the Council's military power had been cut by more than half. Their economy was falling apart as trade networks collapsed. Several small species began to question whether following the Council was worth it anymore. Then humanity sent their final message. A single human ship with no weapons jumped into space above Karath Prime, the homeworld of the species that had led the campaign against humanity. It broadcast on every channel, in every language. President Laura Bishop spoke to the galaxy. People of the galaxy, 3 months ago, your Council murdered an innocent man, a diplomat who came in peace. That act started a war none of us wanted. She paused. Humanity did not want this fight. We came to the Council seeking friendship. We were met with hatred and murder. We responded by removing the threat to our survival. But we are not your enemies. We are not conquerors seeking to build an empire. We only want to live in peace. The Council that condemned us no longer exists. Its military is broken. Its authority is gone. But from this destruction, something new can be built. A true community of equals, where no species rules over others. Humanity offers our hand once more. Not as beggars asking for acceptance, but as equals ready to work together. We hope you will take it. But understand this. We will never again let anyone threaten our existence. The galaxy has learned what humanity can do when pushed to the edge. We hope that lesson never needs to be repeated. The message ended. The ship jumped away, and across a dozen worlds, people of many species stared at their screens and thought about a future they had never imagined. The months after humanity's message were filled with confusion. The old way of running the galaxy was gone, and nothing had come to take its place yet. Species that had been kept in line by council power began acting on their own. Some worked with their neighbors. Others fell into old fights that the council had stopped. President Bishop set up a temporary human meeting place in empty space. It was a small station called New Geneva. It was not much to look at. Just a changed cargo station with basic life support and small rooms. But it sent a message. Humanity was still willing to talk. The first species to send representatives were the Talani. They were the small, furry beings who had been one of the council's least important members. Their representative was Keth, the same person who had been in the room when Daniel Price was condemned to death. He met with Amy Novak, who was now a captain and humanity's main diplomat. They sat across from each other in a bare room. The weight of history hung heavy between them. "I did nothing," Keth said softly. His translator carried the shame in his voice. "I watched them kill your commander, and I did nothing." Amy looked at him for a long moment. She had spent months remembering that day. Daniel's last order. Her own helplessness. She had expected to feel rage when facing someone who had been there when Daniel died. Instead, she just felt tired. "What could you have done?" she asked. The Karath had already decided. "They would have killed you too. Maybe, but I might have kept some small piece of my honor." Keth's ears pressed flat against his head. "I come now because I believe humanity gives the galaxy its best hope for a different future. The Talani want to be part of that future." This was the first official friendship that humanity made. It would not be the last dot over the next year. Species after species reached out to New Geneva. Some came wanting protection from those who had hurt them before. Others came hoping to trade with humanity's growing industries. A few came simply because they were curious about these strange beings who had turned the galaxy upside down in just a few months. Not everyone came in peace. The Karath government had survived humanity's attacks, but just barely. Their military was a shadow of what it had been. Their economy was broken. Their people were angry and scared. The ruling council blamed humanity for everything. They called for revenge. 6 months after Covenant Station's destruction, a Karath attack force of 20 ships launched a raid on a human colony world called Haven's Rest. They did not attack military targets or important buildings. They attacked families. The attack killed 18,000 people before human defense ships could respond. By the time help arrived, the Karath ships had already escaped, leaving only death behind. Admiral Hayes received the news on the Reckoning, which was now stationed at New Geneva as humanity's main defense ship. She read the reports in silence, her face showing nothing. "Admiral?" Commander Griffin asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Hayes stared at the reports for a long time. 18,000 dead. Families destroyed. Children burned alive in their homes. For what? Anger? Wounded pride? "The Karath wanted to show us they can still hurt us," she said finally. "That we have not truly won until we destroy them completely." They might be right. Hayes turned to face her second in command. "And if we destroy them, what then?" "We become the monsters they always said we were. We prove that humanity cannot be trusted with power." She put down the tablet. "No, we respond, but not with destruction of their whole species. Find out where those ships came from. Find out who gave the order. We take out the guilty, and we leave everyone else alone." It took 2 weeks to trace the attack back to a Karath military base on a small colony world. Intelligence confirmed that the raid had been ordered by a group of extremists within the Karath government, acting against the wishes of more moderate leaders. The Reckoning jumped into the system with only a few escort ships. Admiral Hayes broadcast her demands. Surrender the people responsible for the Haven's Rest attack, or face the consequences. The extremists refused. They launched their remaining ships in a desperate attack. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When it was over, human ground forces landed on the colony and arrested the extremists who had ordered the raid. They were brought to New Geneva, where a court made up of representatives from multiple species judged them for their crimes. The message was clear. Humanity would not allow attacks on civilians. But humanity would also not punish innocent people for the crimes of others. The guilty would pay. The innocent would be left alone. This approach won humanity more friends than 100 military victories could have. Species that had feared human power began to trust human judgment. Even some Karath, those who had opposed the extremists, began reaching out to find a way forward that did not involve endless war. But the greatest test of humanity's new order came from somewhere unexpected. The Moravian Stad, the jellyfish-like beings, had controlled galactic money for thousands of years. They were not warriors. Their power came from controlling the banking systems that made trade between stars possible. When the council fell, the Moravians went home and waited to see what would happen. Now they made their move. A Moravian group came to New Geneva, asking to meet with President Bishop herself. The president agreed and traveled to the station with heavy protection. The Moravian representative was a huge being named Velathan. Its see-through body glowed with changing lights that carried meaning beyond what its translator could say. It floated in a special water tank, looking at the human president with alien eyes. "President Bishop," Velathan said in a voice made by machines. "The Moravian Collective has watched humanity's rise with great interest. You have done what no species has done in 10,000 years. You destroyed the old galactic order." "We did not try to destroy anything," Bishop replied. "We only wanted to survive. And yet, here we are. The old order is dead, and you must decide what will replace it." Velathan's body pulsed with strange colors. "The Collective offers our support. Our money networks, our banking knowledge, our connections across the galaxy. With Moravian help, humanity could build a true galactic government that you would control." Bishop studied the alien carefully. "And what would the Collective want in return?" "Only the same deal we had with the Council. A share of all trade money, control over financial matters, certain protections for Moravian interests. In other words, you want to change masters. Replace the Council with humanity and keep everything else the same." Velathan's body rippled. "You say that like it is something bad." "The Council understood what we offered. Surely humanity, with all your famous practical thinking, can see the value too." President Bishop was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the years of struggle, the lives lost, the principles that had guided humanity through its darkest times. She thought about Daniel Price, killed because he believed in a better way. "No," she said finally. "Thank you for your offer, but no." Velathan's colors showed surprise. "You refuse. Do you understand what you are turning down? Without Moravian support, building a new galactic order will be much harder." "I understand." Bishop leaned forward. "What you are offering is exactly what we fought against when we refused the Council's rules. You want us to become what we destroyed. A power that controls others through money instead of military force. That is not the future we are building. Then what future are you building? One based on real equality. We will not be anyone's masters, and we will not let anyone else be masters either." She stood. "Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in it peacefully, alongside everyone else." Velathan was silent for a long time. "You are either very wise or very foolish," it said finally. "Time will tell which. The Collective will be watching." The Moravians left. Over the following months, they slowly accepted the new reality. Their monopoly on galactic money broke apart as human economists. helped other species build their own banking systems. It was not easy, and it was not quick. But piece by piece, a new order began to form.